Hello and welcome to tonight's presentation, Attract Hummingbirds to Your Yard with these 10 beautiful native plants. I'm Lexi from Sagmary Native Plant Community, and I'm here with Kathy.
Thank you for joining us, everybody.
So who doesn't like to see a little visitor in their backyard, a little jewel of a creature called a hummingbird? There's lots of different hummingbird species across the United States, but as we're going to take a look tonight, they're really separated by the Mississippi River. We're going to go over 10 beautiful native plants that will encourage these visitors to your yard. In fact, you'll get so many that you won't know what you were doing without these plants in your yard. They're just such a delightful show to have the hummingbird visitors. So let's get started and start looking at our hummingbirds
And
and the
this is
native plants.
continuing. I just wanted to add here, Lexi, this is continuing our series of just different ways to help you pick out what kind of plants you want to put in your garden or your landscape this spring. Because even though by adding native plants, we can create so much environmental benefits, so many ecosystem benefits. I mean, there's no better way that we can personally help our environment than adding native plants to our landscape. But it's not just for the environment, it's also for our fun and enjoyment. And so, we do like next week we're going to be doing one of like a lot of people really want to attract butterflies and what are some of the favorite flower shapes and flowers of butterflies. And today we're doing the hummingbirds because if you've never had these in your garden, it is so special when you have these. They are just amazing and they can be friendly, they can get to know you. They sometimes will eat off of a feeder out of your hand. They get to wreck it. They're just such a joy to have around. So we want to learn a little bit more about them tonight and also learn about some of these awesome native plants that will help bring them to your garden.
So first, let's just talk about the divide in the middle of the country that separates the east and the west and the types of hummingbirds that you might see in your backyard. So if you live west of the Mississippi River, you are super duper in luck because you might see 4 to 7 different types of hummingbirds in your yard. And the most common western species include Anna's hummingbird, black-chinned hummingbird, broad-tailed hummingbird, Rufus hummingbird, Calliope hummingbird, Costa's hummingbird, and the broad-billed hummingbird. Now, these hummingbirds will like several of the plants that we're going to go over in tonight's presentation, but there's also a couple of other species or other plant species that are specific to the Western United States that they will like to visit. And they are called desert honeysuckle, hummingbird trumpet, scarlet gilia, and California fuchsia. But we're going to go over some of their favorites that are common across the country. So again, planting regionally native species tailored to what these birds like to eat is going to help sustain their local populations and also their migratory success. So here is a super little beautiful bird. It's a jeweled ruby-throated hummingbird. And Kathy and I were just talking about one of the most special things about this bird, and this is a male, is that those little feathers around its neck are actually not red. Isn't that cool, Kathy? I just love that.
I was thinking as you were saying that, and I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to the previous slide. I wonder if that's the same thing. I think this is an Anna's hummingbird. Correct me if I'm wrong, anybody watching that lives out west. But I'm wondering if it's the same thing. Most likely, the pink is not really pink,
It's an iridescent type of feather that's reflecting the light, and we see it as red.
but yet the females don't have that.
The females are just usually the green and the more subtle colors. So they really are like living jewels in their movements, in their feathers, and they're actually so light. They weigh less than a penny. Isn't
Right.
that amazing? It's just so light and tiny. So, for all of us who are east of the Mississippi, which Kathy and I are, we're in the Chicago suburbs area, we see the ruby-throated hummingbird. And it's just such a special little bird. And they actually fly alone. And we're going to talk a little bit more about their migration in the next couple slides. But what a treat to see these in our backyard. And they're actually breeding here and they migrate up here just about this time, maybe a little bit earlier in our region, middle to end of April. It's now May, and we should definitely be seeing them by now.
I've already seen a few.
Oh, lucky you.
It's because I have native plants. No, I
That's
have
right.
one specific native plant that we'll be talking about later that I know I'm going to get them because they love this plant so much. So, but we'll talk about that later. For now, we're going to talk about how awesome these creatures are and the trip they make across the Gulf of Mexico, many of them. I mean, I think some will overwinter in the far south. I think sometimes they're seen there in the far south US, but most of them will travel across the Gulf and go into Mexico or Central America. And it is actually instinct and lengthening days that prompts them to start making their long journey north to their breeding grounds in the eastern US and southern Canada. So these little delicate creatures are able to make this amazing thousands of mile journey every year. And I've actually heard stories, Lexi, about, fishermen, sailors, ships that have reported that these guys will actually land on the ship and take rests during
That is
their
just so
journey.
special. I would love to be that Fisher person when
I
getting
know.
a visitor.
Can I just hang out here for a while?
I
You have
wonder
any
if they put,
bug?
yeah, do they put bird feeders like on their boats? I wonder.
They didn't mention that, but they just said that they have been known to land on ships to rest.
So smart.
Really? So yeah, these guys, they're just amazing, and it's so many things about the days and what's going on around them that prompts their migration. And on the other end of it, it's the start of the spring blooming season with abundant floral nectar sources. That's their signal to start heading north as well. So they're really tied into the flowers that are around them, and that gives them the signal that it's time to start flying north, that there will be enough uh, nutrition and enough fuel to make the big journey, because they're starting to see some of these flowers that they depend on, many of which they are their, of course, the native plants with which they co-evolve. Those are the ones that they're really tied into, and their habits really reflect the presence of those flowers starting to come up in the landscape. These amazing creatures, and this is just unbelievable. They don't walk. They have feet, they can perch, but they don't walk. Everything they do is they will hover over a flower. And they hover by beating their wings so fast that they will actually beat their wings up to 80 times per second, which obviously requires a tremendous amount of energy, and that's why they love so much sugar through our flower nectar. But think of that, 80 times per second. How is that even possible?
They sure need a lot of energy to keep going. And so those super sweet nectar sources, that's really what fuels them and keeps them going. So again, like we said, these ruby-throated hummingbirds fly alone. And it's often over the same path that they migrated in previous years. A hummingbird, their average lifespan is about 10 years. So imagine that they've made that trip 10 times and they remember all those markers along the way. They remember the plants that they found that gave them the nectar sources, the yards that fed them, the gardens that sheltered them where they made their nests. And here's an example. I just love this picture. It shows the hummingbird's nest and how intricate it is, made up of a lot of different elements. I think it's also, you said lichen, Kathy, is in here.
Yes.
And it also looks like some fuzzy material, maybe like something from milkweed, but it looks very soft and cozy. And it
And it's
looks like
hard to grasp how truly small that nest is. It is tiny.
absolutely tiny. And
And look at the iridescence on her. So this is the female without the red throat or the appearance of a red throat. But just look at that gorgeous green iridescence on her back.
She's absolutely elegant. She's just fantastic. And the little nest looks like it's just grown out of this branch. It's really hidden very well before those birds get big, and while they're still in their little eggs, she lays two eggs in this little nest, and they're tiny and they're protected and cozy in this little creation.
So they will eat bugs, but they do eat mostly flower nectar, the adults. Uh, But of course, during breeding season, they're looking for insects because like most birds, even that are seed eaters or berry eaters, when they have young, they're feeding that protein to that growing young. So at that point, they're really looking for um, insects. And I just want to mention here, these little babies here, we can't really tell whether they're male or female yet because the males don't get the red or the appearance of a red throat until their second year.
Oh, wow, it takes that long for it to change. So maybe
Yes.
something has to develop with those iridescent feathers later
Mm-hmm.
on. And while we're on this slide, we should just talk about traditional hummingbird feeders. A lot of people are big fans of using those, and they do have to be changed frequently. I think every single day you're supposed to change it, right, Kathy?
In the heat, if it's very hot out, like if it's cooler out, if it's below 80, you can go, 2, 3, maybe even 4 days in the cooler weather. But when we have this really hot weather, when it's in the 90s, that can get moldy pretty quick. So it's better to change that water, in the heat of the summer close to every day, so that
And
we don't want to make the birds sick.
right. And if you have native plants, you actually probably don't really need the feeder so much, but those feeders can be helpful during migration to just give them an extra sugar source. But what the feeders don't offer that the native plants do is they offer protein. They offer protein through the insects that are attracted to the native plants, nesting materials, and also biodiversity. So again, native plants are going to be a great food source for them. And also they're that guiding signpost for them of when to migrate because those flowers are actually in bloom.
Can I just add that I've put periodically, mostly during migration seasons, spring and fall, I've put hummingbird feeders out. And I will say that, for many years before I understood about native plants and so on. And back before I had planted all of the natives that I have now, I used to get much more action on my hummingbird feeders than I do now. Now, when I see them in my landscape, they're very rarely on the feeder. They're on my plants. They prefer the plants, those native plants more than the feeder. But where the feeders especially can come in handy is in the late summer, early fall, more like September, because then you have a much higher population of hummingbirds because now you have the young. So where you have, maybe 3 times more hummingbirds than you had in the spring. And so those feeders can help them have enough resources to fatten up to make their journey. But during the majority of the season, they're gonna prefer those native plants over a feeder for sure.
It's
And
like
I do want to
having
ask everybody before we go on, remember, please subscribe. That really does help out our channel. And please consider, sharing this information, and please like this video if you like our content. There we go. So flowers that hummingbirds like are critical to their migration and their survival. These flowers really are their main food source, other than when they are really looking for insects to feed the young. And I also have heard a story. You have to be a little, I always am weary of this because, I get a lot of spider webs in the yard throughout the year, but these guys are so small, they can actually get caught in spider webs.
oh wow.
Yeah, yeah, and yet I think it's these I've actually heard that they will also use spider web material to help make their nest too. So maybe that's how, but they can actually get caught in a spider web, and I've heard of people rescuing them from the spider web. So Just something I wanted to throw in there. But anyway, so they fly by day when the nectar from the flowers is the most abundant, and they will drop down during their migration to get fueled up and then move on.
So the shape of the flowers is really, really important, and they love to feed from these tubular flowers. So here we've got an example of a honeysuckle, and a lot of our native plants in North America are this long tubular shape, and it just actually perfectly mimics the length of their bill. And the hummingbird's beak can get in there, but a little bee can't get in there without poking a hole at the end of that flower and sucking out the nectar and in different way. So these plants are actually protecting the nectar source for the birds. And so this is, definitely a specialized relationship between this plant and the hummingbirds, and they depend on each other.
And then, of course, the color is important. And I'm assuming it has to do something with their vision and what colors they're primarily seeing. That's just a theory that I'm saying, but it's not necessarily, if correct me if I'm wrong on that. But their definite favorite flower colors, the flowers that they are the most attractive to, are ones that are red, orange, and bright pink. They love flowers of those colors. However, they also will visit white and purple flower, if they're tubular flowers. So they will visit white and purple tubular. Not supposed to be real big fans of more pale, pastel-y flowers or yellow. Doesn't seem to be one of their favorites, but they will visit those. And I've had a number of people, like when they're over at my house and they see hummingbirds, and they'll say, "Oh my gosh, I've never seen a hummingbird before." There are a lot of people out there who have never seen a hummingbird before, people that live in cities that have never seen one in person. And there's nothing special about my yard. I live in a very urban, suburban area. It's just the presence of these native plants. I mean, if you put some of these plants in, you will get hummingbirds. They're not as rare as you think. These guys they're around. And if you have some of these plants that they love, you'll get them. I mean, I virtually guarantee it.
And they'll return. So now they know your yard. They are going to keep coming back.
Absolutely.
So now we're going to take a look at some native plants that are just some of their favorites. Again, looking at these flower shapes that are just built for them. And they do more than just attract the hummingbirds, they support their entire life cycle. So they are their food, then their fuel, their critical habitat, all in one.
Look at the face on that guy.
And the angle is just
Isn't it a cute, just a cute expression? And
adorable.
this is our favorite part now. Now we get to talk about these amazing plants again. And another wonderful thing they do is they take care of our hummingbird, these awesome plants. And we have to start this out by talking about the reddest native plant that we have, this wonderful beacon of red that you plant this and you have enough of them to see it, a few of these plants, you're going to get hummingbirds. That is cardinal flower, or Lobelia cardinalis, one of our native lobelias. And this beauty likes full to part sun, medium to wet soil. So this would not be one that you want to put in a really super dry place along a driveway, along cement. This wants to be in an area, doesn't have to be a rain garden, although it will do well in a rain garden, but just a place that is not super dry, that gets a decent amount of moisture. Grows 2 to 4 feet tall. This is a stunner. And I have a little bit of it in my garden, and it I see hummingbirds on it all the time. They just, you don't think they're around, but boy, they find it. And this thing will just start blooming, and it'll have like 2 or 3 little blooms open, and darn it, there's a hummingbird on it. And you swear it's sitting on a branch waiting for this thing, these blooms to open. I don't know how it finds it so fast. This will bloom July, August, and September. And it will also attract butterflies, because butterflies also, with their proboscis, they can reach into those tubular flowers. Some of our long-tongued bees can as well, but butterflies certainly like this plant too. And it is hardy in zones 3 to 9 and native to the eastern and central US. So that's a huge native. Look at that, like it's actually native to the Southwest.
Oh, yeah, it goes all the way over. I didn't realize that.
And isn't that weird because it does like more moist conditions? You wouldn't think it would like the Southwest, right?
Yeah, it's a fantastic plant. And like so many of our native plants, native flowers, the spike is made up of like multiple flowers. I mean, there might be like 50 flowers on one of those spikes. It's just continuously blooming.
And it is also, in addition to being a beacon for the hummingbirds, it is also a host plant for several species of butterflies and moths, including the spicebush swallowtail. And we have a picture of the spicebush swallowtail here. Not on cardinal flower, on another flower, but there's a picture of the adult. And then, of course, we had to have a picture of its cute little caterpillar because you can't have a presentation without that face.
It just turns into something so different than what the caterpillar looks like. It's so crazy.
It's like, what are you talking about hummingbirds for? Look at me.
I'm like a
I'm the
snake.
star here. You might see me on your cardinal flower. Who cares about those hummingbirds?
So wild Columbine, this is another one that's just perfectly made for them and is that beautiful red color that's going to attract them. Now, this is an early spring bloomer, so it's really perfectly timed with their migration up from Mexico and the South. And, this is the nectar source that they're looking for. So it's a beautiful woodland little plant. It grows 1 to 3 feet tall. And when you have a whole mass of these, it is just a sight to behold. They are really, really stunning. And they are not picky. They will do well in medium to dry soil, like rocky soil. They're really not picky. And also full sun all the way to full shade. So these should be blooming now. Are yours blooming yet, Kathy?
They are blooming now, and I have to say that I added 3 of them along the fence last year, and 2 of them are already more than 2 feet tall, and I just planted them last year.
Wow.
So
They
they really take quick.
They really do. And they're just so elegant. This is such a beautiful little slipper of a flower. And it's going to not only attract our hummingbirds and they're attuned to this being available in the landscape and feeding off of it, but also our early emerging bees are going to be looking for this as well. And it's also a larval host plant. Again, it tolerates so many different conditions. It's going to do well for just about anybody. And it's one of the few red native plants, and we have all of the red ones, I think, in our presentation tonight. But it is hardy in zones 3 to 8 and native to the eastern United States. And here's the Columbine dusky wing, for which it is Columbine is the host plant for. And it's good, almost over half of the country you're going to find this plant. And again, it's really prevalent in our woodlands, and just really a stunner to put in your garden.
It really is. This is like one of the staple native plants. Everybody loves it. The bees love it. The hummingbirds love it. It's easy. It likes a lot of different sites. It's just a really easy, good native plant. If you're just getting into this and you want some of the tried and trues, this is for sure one. Not finicky at all.
Not at all.
Another one that's not finicky is our wild bergamot, Monarda fistulosa. So this is one of our native monardas. And we talk about this so much when it comes to bees. It's also called bee balm because bees love it. And they're just, they're just crazy about this. You're going to see so many different species of bees when this thing is blooming. But also, who loves it is creatures that have a long proboscis, like this hummingbird moth that we're seeing here, or a one that has a nice long tongue like those hummingbirds. And again, they do like flowers that are a lavender color, so they will be very attracted to this Monarda fistulosa, which grows to 4 feet tall in full to part sun, moist to dry soil. So it is, again, a very adaptable plant in the mint family. So it is one of our native plants that will repel rodents and rabbits. So if you have a large rabbit population near you, this might be a plant that would work very well in your landscape. Again, pollinator magnet, hummingbirds love it. Hardy in zones 3 to 9, and it is native to the eastern, central, and southwestern US. Wow. Wow. So pretty much anybody who's watching, sorry, California and Florida, but anybody else who's watching, this is a good plant for you. And it is the larval host plant for the hermit sphinx moth that we are seeing here. And that's just one. There are other species that it is, but here you can put a face to one of the creatures that relies on this plant for its very survival to feed its young. So great plant, and hummingbirds love it.
So here's a lesser known Monarda. It's called Bradbury's Monarda. And the reason we really like it is because it's a shorter Monarda and it's going to do really well in full to part sun and medium soil. And it's just a stunning plant. Again, these kind of frilly looking flowers, each one of those is actually a tube. Looks very exotic and just beautiful in your garden. So this one's also drought tolerant and it's compact. So this is going to bloom in June and July, and loved by hummingbirds as well. And it's native to parts of the Midwest, a little bit less of a native zone, and it's hardy in zones 5 to 8. So there we have a little bit less of a native range, but if you're in these areas, definitely try this one out. And it's a host plant for many species of moths, and including this gray marvel moth, which is a little superhero. Look, it looks like he has a cape.
We are lucky that this is native by us. This is one of the, I'm adding 4 new species to my garden this year, and this was one of them. I'm excited about it.
Definitely. It's elegant and really beautiful.
And from what we've been told by landscapers, much less prone to powdery mildew than the Monarda fistulosa. And another Monarda. So even though we said that, these are 10 plants that, sometimes if we have a lot of like Monardas, we're kind of combining that all in one. So if you're going to add a Monarda, you have 3 different species that will be loved by hummingbirds. And I would assume that this would be its favorite because of the red, but I don't have experience with that to say, because I have fistulosa and I'm going to get the last one, but I don't have any of this. Do you have any of this?
No, I want to try this one too. I've seen this in people's gardens, like in Michigan and Indiana. I think people do tend to like plant this out of its native range just because it's so stunning. And I think the
It
native
is.
range is a little bit smaller than our other Monardas.
And now that I'm looking at it, I can't figure out why I don't have some of this.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think this is as easy to find at native plant suppliers, come to think of it. So this grows 3 to 5 feet tall, and it likes full to part sun, medium to moist soil, and blooms June, July, August. Again, loved by pollinators, loved by hummingbirds. It is a shorter Monarda, so it doesn't get quite as tall as the fistulosa, but it will get a little bit taller than, what was the last one we talked about?
Oh,
Brad
Bradbury, like that
Bradbury's. It'll
gets
get a
like
little taller than Bradbury, but not as tall as fistulosa. And native to parts of the eastern US. So let's take a look at this range. Okay, so this is very much an eastern plant. And look at that by us, Lexi. That turquoise color means that it's kind of dying out here, correct?
the turquoise means it's kind of more been introduced. Whereas the bright green is like it's totally native to that county and it's native to that state. So
So
the
this is why we don't see much of it here with native plant growers.
yeah, I think so. I think it's more than it's been introduced, and people are probably just taking to it because of it's stunning. You know, it
It's
is a
stunning.
beautiful plant. So there's so many different variations of Liatris, and this is just the classic prairie blazing star. And it is a phenomenal plant, those spikes of purple. And this is going to bloom for you at the height of summer, and it's going to attract so many different pollinators and butterflies, and of course, our hummingbirds. So this one is a taller plant. It grows 3 to 5 feet tall. It's going to look really good with, some other full sun prairie plants with it. So you could plant the cardinal flower with it. You could plant some taller sweet black-eyed Susans or some milkweed with it. And it's just going to be a stunning display in the height of summer. And it is definitely a full sun plant, medium to moist soil. Again, blooming in July and August. This is hardy in zones 3 to 9. The hummingbirds will be enjoying their nectar treats from this. And this is native to the central US, and it's also a larval host plant as well. So here we go, kind of smack dab in the middle of prairie land. We've got
Uh-huh.
the prairie blazing star. So it is the larval host plant for many moth species, including this wavy lined emerald moth and the glorious flower moth. So we get the benefit of being a host plant and also providing great nectar resources.
Royal catchfly. This is one you don't see very much. It's becoming very rare. This was a plant of the prairies, but of course we don't have the prairies anymore. So this is a really unique plant. I'm sure the hummingbirds are missing this as it disappears from our landscapes. So this will grow 2 to 4 feet tall in full sun. So this definitely is a sun lover. You probably might get leggy or not bloom as well if you try putting it in part sun. So this is definitely a full sun. It likes medium soil and it will bloom in July and August. Hardy in zones 4 to 9. It is attracted to butterflies because it does have tubular flowers, as you can see here. But boy, the hummingbirds, just looking at the shape of those flowers and the color of this flower, I'm sure that there's a party going on by this when this thing is blooming. Again, native in the central US, becoming very rare. And again, these we've showed you 3 of them, but when it comes to red plants, this is about it. I mean, there is very few red native plants in throughout most of the country, and this is one of the few. And here we can see its native range, and we can certainly see, I believe the yellow is places where it's really becoming rare.
Yep,
And
it's very rare in those areas.
so it seems like the only place where there is a decent population of this is like, would that be down like in the southern half of Missouri?
Yeah, like by St. Louis, I think.
Interesting with that. So here we have it is also a larval host plant for many butterfly species, and it is loved by the black swallowtail butterfly, like we can see here, that is feasting on royal catchfly.
I love that plant. I grew that from seed like 2 seasons ago, and I planted it next to my cardinal flower. So I had a bunch of red all together. But the cool thing is that the royal catchfly is like 2 feet tall, and then your cardinal flower is like 3 to 4 feet tall. And so you've got something, a little bit of a mix for the hummingbirds to come and visit and see all those red flowers. So
What is
very
the story
pretty.
again about why it's called royal catchfly? The flies try to get the nectar out and they get kind of stuck in there or something?
Yeah, I don't know if they get stuck on the stem or in the flower, but it's not like it doesn't like dissolve the fly or anything like that. I don't know. We'll have to do some more research into that name.
Is it mean? Is it mean to the flies? No.
It must serve a purpose, right? Why it
It
actually
must
does
serve a
that.
purpose. Because you look at it's kind of a name. Why do you call it catchfly? There is something having to do with something with flies.
Yep, for sure.
But the hummingbirds love it.
And yeah, that's all we care about tonight.
We'll worry about the flies later. Okay, so this is a favorite of so many. I mean, what can you say about this beautiful milkweed? I have to say, at our yearly native plant sale, this is the #1 seller. This last year was sold out in the first 15 minutes of our plant sale. It's such a popular plant because it's just so lovely and it's such a unique color. You think we don't have much red native plants. We really don't have many orange native plants. This is such a striking plant in the landscape, and of course, host plant for our endangered monarch butterfly, but also a favorite of these awesome hummingbirds. So Asclepias tuberosa likes medium to dry soil, really seems to like soil on the dry side. Sometimes the least hospitable place that you have is an area that you think is inhospitable because of hot, dry sun is actually the location that this is going to do the best in. It will bloom June, July, August. It only gets to be 2 feet tall, and it is hardy in zones 3 to 9, native to the eastern, central, and southwestern US. So that sounds like a big range. And yes, it is. So again, this plant is uh, native for most of us. And not only is it the larval host plant for our iconic monarch butterfly, but is also the host plant for the queen butterfly.
Foxglove beer tongue. So you can see again why hummingbirds might really love this plant, and it's because of these tubular flowers. So they're really attracted to anything that has got this shape of flower. It's got a deep, rich nectar source. And there's lots and lots of blooms for them to explore and find that source, and it keeps constant for them. So the wonderful thing about the beard tongue, and this one in particular, is that it adapts to many different light conditions. So from full sun to part shade, and it prefers medium to dry soil, and it gets to 3 feet tall. It is just such an elegant plant and really will look beautiful in a formal garden. It has beautiful foliage and beautiful flowers. So once the flowers are done blooming, they'll be blooming early, June and July. You'll have this beautiful foliage after they have bloomed. So, to start out the season, we've got our wild columbine, then we go into the beard tongue, foxglove beard tongue, and then we go into some of our later prairie plants blooming in the summer. Super easy to grow this plant, and it is also a favorite of many big native bee species. So our native bumblebees love this. They crawl into those flowers and get that nectar source as well. And this is hardy in zones 4 to 8 and native to the eastern United States. So again, this is really important once our hummingbirds have migrated up here and they need their next nectar source to start breeding. So that's why this one is super important. Foxglove beard tongue is also called smooth penstemon. Some of these have multiple names, but we're calling it foxglove today. And here you can see some long-tongued bees feeding on it, and it's also the host plant for the confused Haploa moth, which we just love the style of this moth.
I feel sorry for him because he's confused.
He's confused, but he's got great style. So
As long as you look good, doesn't matter if you're confused, right?
that's right.
Okay, some phlox now. Phlox is an amazing plant, and phlox is a beacon for hummingbirds for sure, and how beautiful it is. And here is some marsh phlox, Phlox glaberrima. And this is a beautiful, stunning plant that grows 2 to 4 feet tall in full to part sun. And as the name indicates, this really likes the soil to be medium to on the moist side. So if you have a wetter area of your landscape, this would be a wonderful plant to add with a beautiful pop of color. And it has, and I can attest to the fact I've seen this, it blooms a very long time. So this is a very long blooming plant. Excellent garden plant. This is just a wonderful plant for any size garden. Just a joy to have. and it is hardy in zones 4 to 8. It will attract many species of butterflies and, of course, our beloved hummingbirds. It is also a larval host plant, and this is native to the southeastern and the central U.S.
Now, Kathy, isn't there a non-native plant that looks very similar to this?
I think there's a number of phlox. There is a number of plants in the phlox family, and there's one or two species that are native here. Well, I shouldn't say that. We have woodland phlox. We have a few ground cover phlox that are native here. We have marsh phlox, and we have uh, really prairie phlox, and but I think there are a lot of phlox. There's a lot of different species of phlox, and probably a lot sold out there that are not necessarily native to your area. So you really gotta kind of keep an eye on that. So yeah, here we go. Marsh phlox. It is the host plant for the phlox moth. That makes sense. Which is critically endangered in the Midwestern range. Wow. And here we can see a hummingbird hawk moth that we couldn't even get a picture of the phlox moth because it's become so endangered because our phlox, they just aren't in the landscapes anymore. What can I say? So the phlox moth is struggling. And but here we have the hummingbird hawk moth that is feeding on marsh phlox. So stunning plant, really stunning.
And here we have another variety of phlox, the woodland phlox, and this is Phlox divaricata. This is going to grow a little bit smaller. It's only 1 to 2 feet tall, and this is a shady woodland plant. And it blooms early in the spring and has fragrant blue or lavender flowers. So the color could look a little bit different from this picture, but it's a great source of nectar as the hummingbirds are coming north, and it's thriving in the shady garden. So it's a rare treat for hummingbirds to come and visit this plant. It likes medium to moist soil, and it's drought tolerant once established. Again, it's a little bit earlier of a bloomer in May to June, and it's hardy in zones 3 to 8. It's also going to attract butterflies and the clearwing moths. Of course, it's going to attract our wonderful hummingbirds, and it's a larval host plant as well.
It's doing a lot.
Doing a lot. That's right. And here we've got quite a big native range on this plant. And here we can see the super cool hummingbird clearwing moth. And the first time you see one of these is a very special day indeed, because they fly just like the hummingbirds, flapping those little wings and hovering and getting their nectar source and kind of zipping around. So again, it's a host plant for many moth species, including this clearwing moth, and it's a beautiful addition to a woodland garden.
Okay, another one of our lobelias, like the cardinal flower. Here we have our great blue lobelia, Lobelia syphilitica. Close enough. And so, and speaking of, and this looks beautiful paired with the cardinal flower. They just look beautiful if you plant some of these together, and they like the same conditions, so they will thrive together, and the colors are just stunning, stunning together. So the great blue lobelia grows 1 to 4 feet tall in full to part sun. Medium to moist soil, just like the cardinal flower. It blooms July, August, September, and it is hardy in zones 3 to 9. And this plant definitely thrives in clay soil, and it will attract butterflies for you. It will attract hummingbirds for you. It's native to central and eastern US, and of course, it's also a larval host plant. So it's a host plant. So here we can see the large native range, and it is a host plant for many moth species, including the pink washed looper and the greater black letter dart. Never saw one of those, I have to say.
No,
So
me
here,
neither.
and here we have a photo of the Luna moth, which is one of our largest moth. I think it's like our second largest moth. It's huge. It's like 6 inches across, close to, on our great blue lobelia. So a lot of really cool creatures love this plant.
I love that plant too. I just think it's really great for filling in spaces too. You could plant one plant and it'll like self-seed itself, and all of a sudden you'll have like 3 to 6 plants and it's just going to fill in. And it's so elegant and beautiful with all of those blooms. So beautiful addition to any garden, really.
Totally agree.
Coral honeysuckle. Now you have experience with this one, and I personally do not. So I'll go through it, but I would love for you to add. Unfortunately, there are many invasive honeysuckles. There's Japanese honeysuckle. Um, I can't remember the name of the other one right now, but anyways, I see them all over the place in these naturalized areas in our forest reserves and back in my yard, unfortunately. So when we do see those, we need to try to take them out because they've really uh, taken a toll on our forest preserves. So we've got a great alternative and something that's going to really attract the hummingbirds. And here you can see how that flower again is just perfectly made for its super long and curved bill. So it's got a woody vine. This is a vine, and it loves full sun to part shade, medium to moist soil, and then it's going to bloom profusely, I believe, and then have sporadic flowers. Can you go into that a little bit, Kathy?
Yeah, for sure. I just want to say to you, I've had this for years, and this is one of my favorite plants in the garden. This is just absolutely stunning. And as Lexi said, it's a woody vine. It's not an aggressive vine. It's a vine that you could put by a trellis and it's going to stay with the trellis. It also takes very well to pruning. So if you like a vine and you don't want, something with a little height to put a trellis in the garden and have something grow up it, but you don't want, say, the aggressiveness of our native clematis or something like that, this is a stunning plant for any garden. And you will have hummingbirds. I don't hesitate with that at all. I have this on a trellis. As soon as the hummingbirds come. They sit on the trellis, they hang out by this plant all the time. This is a beacon for hummingbirds that is just, I mean, it's just a done deal. If you have this plant, you're going to get hummingbirds. And yes, it does. It like mine now is the buds are there. So in the next week or two, probably the next week, it will start blooming and it's really smothered with these flowers when it does its heavy bloom. But then it does its growing. And on the new growth, it periodically gets new flowers. Like it'll grow a little bit, some more green foliage will come out and then it'll form a flower there. And then somewhere else it's growing some more foliage and then it gets a flower there. So it will do sporadic blooms throughout the entire summer and into the fall. And it's interesting because it's barely native here. I mean, it's barely hardy here. I mean, zone 6 to 9, but yet this thing, those leaves, this started greening up and showing life as soon as we get a hint of warm weather in the late winter. I mean, it really comes to life quick. So for me, this plant has been super duper duper hardy. And it attracts many pollinators. I see bees on this. The pollinators love it. If you plant nothing else on this list and you want hummingbirds, try to get your hands on one of these. And it also is a larval host plant. So here you can see the native range. Now, where we are, we're part of the native range, but it looks like with those colors, it doesn't really exist in the wild much anymore. Would you say that's true, Lexi? But it once did?
Right, or it's been like more introduced here. It just does really, really well in our area.
It does really well. Don't be
And
afraid that, yeah.
what do you have it growing on a chain link fence, or like what is it growing on?
No, that's interesting that you asked that because I did have it growing on a chain link fence with a trellis to make that chain link fence taller behind it because I wanted to be able to let this get big. But then I replaced the chain link fence a couple of years ago with a cedar fence. And I had to cut this thing back off that chain link fence. I butchered this. I had to cut this back to almost nubs. But I had read that it takes very well to even aggressive pruning, and this thing has come back like a champ. So,
Wow.
and now I just have actually two side-by-side trellises to accommodate this. You can keep it as small as you want, but I want to get some height and some width on it because it's so stunning and it draws so many hummingbirds.
Yeah, so if you have an ugly chain link fence, try this on it to
Yeah,
cover
really,
it up.
that's it, cover up that fence. And so it is the host plant for the spring azure and the snowberry clearwing moth and more. So this is, and here it all comes back to these hummingbirds that we're talking about tonight. And here you can see one of our precious ruby-throated hummingbirds on coral honeysuckle.
Wow, so we've made it through 10 native plants that you can add to your garden that are going to attract hummingbirds and support their life cycle, their migration, their breeding, and there's something, for everybody in the country. And by choosing native plants, you're not just decorating your yard, you're creating a lifeline for these hummingbirds and our other pollinators. So every plant that gets into the ground is helping sustain the ecosystem and helping support all of the life and bringing all of that to your yard.
And if butterflies are your thing, check us out next week. We're going to be talking about some of the favorite native plants of butterflies to bring those magnificent creatures into your garden.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, everyone.